Hey, hello everyone. Hope you are doing great. So in this video, we're gonna talk about OAuth 2.0 workflow. So before I can start with the upcoming slides, I want to give you an overview about how OAuth 2.0 workflow work. So OAuth 2.0 is industry standard protocol that is used to create an authorization between two third-party applications. Talking about the use cases of OAuth 2.0, so one of the popular use case is social login, where you can log in using your social account on any website. So there are tons of website that provides social login on their login page. So you can simply click on your social account and you get logged in on any website. So it provides a seamless user experience, and in the entire OAuth 2.0 workflow, the credential is not shared with any third-party application. Now, talking about OAuth 2.0 protocol. So let's take an example. So there's a user and he just want to log in on abc.com. So he will find a login with Google option. So once user click on sign in with Google, it will redirect to the Google login page, and after providing the Google credential, the user will get logged in and it will again redirect to the consent screen. So the consent screen is quite important in OAuth 2.0 workflow. So the consent screen makes sure that the user will provide the user information that the user wants. So let us suppose if abc.com want to access user email address, user contact information, and once user provide the consent, then only it will be able to access that particular data. And once like the consent screen will be accepted, then user will get logged in on abc.com. So this is how OAuth 2.0 workflow work on any website. Now, talking about OAuth 2.0 terminology, so there is a resource owner. So, resource owner is simply the user who will be having particular resources. Like in case of user Google account, so there are lots of resources like Google Contact, Google Photos, and once user log in on any website, then particular website will be able to access their contact information or user information. So the resource owner will be something like a user who will be having the data. Then there will be a client. So the client is simply a website that provides a social login option or that supports OAuth 2.0 workflow into their website. Then there is a authorization server. So the authorization server is a server where the particular like authorization related stuff will be managed. So in OAuth 2.0 the authorization is quite important. So once you click on login with any particular social provider option, then you will be redirected to the authorization page where you need to provide the credential of that particular provider. So that particular authorization related workflow is managed by authorization server. Then there is a resource server. So in case of Google account for any particular user, all of the like Google Photos, like the connected application like Google Photos, Google Drive, so these services is hosted on any server. So this server will be known as resource server. I mean, in a simple term, the server where your particular resource will be hosted is known as resource server. Now, talking about OAuth 2.0 terminology, so there is some more terminology like scope. So the scope is something that limits the information that user wants to share. So if abc.com want to access user information like email address or contact information, then the website need to pass this into the scope, and then only website will be able to access that particular data. Then there will be consent. So the consent is simply accepted by user in order to provide share that particular user information to third party application. Okay, now talking about OAuth 2.0 flow. So there's two flow that is like popular. I mean that is quite popular and used by different companies. So the first workflow is back channel. This is also known as explicit workflow. So in back channel, like after authorization, I mean once user click on login with particular provider and after providing the credential, it will redirect to the particular redirect URL with the code. So this code is quite important in back channel workflow, I mean the explicit workflow. And then like the particular website need to exchange this code with the access token. But in front channel, I mean, this particular code part is skipped. Instead, like after authorization, it will simply return the token that is used by the website to access particular user information. So talking about the security, so explicit workflow is very secure, and it is always recommended to use explicit workflow because it work on both like client side and server side. So once you get the code on client side, you will need to call the access token endpoint to access, like exchange the token from your server side application. So it will make the application more secure. But in front channel, you will directly get the access token into the browser, so it is quite less secure. But in some use cases, front channel, I mean the implicit workflow is also used. Now talking about how explicit workflow works. So there's a client, and he just want to provide an option of login with Google. So firstly, you need to implement authorization URL. I mean, he need to create an authorization endpoint. So in authorization endpoint, there's some parameter that is required, like redirect URL. So the redirect URL will be the URL where after authorization, the user will be redirected with the code. Then the response type. So in explicit workflow, the response type will always be code, because after authorization, the code will be returned on any particular redirect URL. Then the scope, like what kind of information the website want to access from the particular user. So they need to provide that that particular name into the scope. Then there will be client ID. So in case of Google, so you will get a client ID from Google Developer Console. And if you want to implement like Google login, if you want to implement Facebook login on your website, then you will get the client ID from your Facebook Developer Console. So once like user will click on this authorization endpoint from your website, then it will redirect it to the authorization server with the Google login page. And after like successful login, the user will be redirected to the consent page. And once user accept the consent, then it will redirect the user to this callback URL, that is also known as a redirect URL. So it will redirect the user to the redirect URI with the authorization code. Now the website, the abc.com will use that code to exchange with access token. So in order to exchange the code with access token, the abc.com website need to call the Google access token endpoint. And they will, he will need to add certain parameter again, like client ID code that you obtain from the authorization workflow. Then the client secret is also required in this case, because in the access token endpoint is a protected resource, and it can only be called from the server side application. So client secret is required. Once you add all of these information into that particular endpoint, then you will get an access token. And then this access token will be used to access any particular resource of user. Like if you want to access the Google contact of any particular user, then you can directly call the contact API with this access token, and it will return the data. Now talking about implicit workflow. So in implicit workflow, again, like there will be a client, and like the website need to create the authorization endpoint. And here all of the parameter will be same, just in the response type, instead of using code, the website need to use the token, because after authorization, the the website will directly get the token. And they can use that token to access particular resource of the user. So again, like after successful authentication on the Google login page, it will redirect to the consent screen. And again, after like accepting the consent, it will redirect the user to the redirect URL with the token. And then website will use that token to access particular data of the user. So this is how implicit and explicit workflow work. Now let's check like how actually this work behind the scene. So this is the, I mean, Google authorization endpoint that I have created. So in order to like obtain the client ID, you can simply go to Google Developer Console and create an application. You can find the documentation of how you can create a Google like developer app, and how you can obtain the client ID in order to use it in the OAuth 2.0 workflow. Then I have added the redirect URL. So the redirect URL I have added is google.com, but if you are implementing on your website, then you can simply add it with your website URL. Then the response type is code, as this is the explicit workflow. Then I have added the profile into the scope. Now if I just need to implement this OAuth 2.0 endpoint, then I will simply like demonstrate how it will work. So you'll need to open it into the browser. But if you are like providing it on your, providing the login option on your website, then you can simply add this URL on the click off button, and the user will be redirected to the Google login page. As I'm already logged in on my Google account, so I will click on my account, and it will like return the code on the redirect URL. Now I can use this code to exchange with the access token. So I can simply use this code, and I can like add this code into the access token endpoint. So again, like in order to like obtain the access token, you will need to call the access token endpoint of Google. So here like it will require the client secret, then client ID. Then in code you can add the code that we obtained in the previous step. Then the grant type will be the authorization code. Then you will need to add the redirect URL. It will be the same as you have used in the authorization endpoint. So once I make a request, so it will return the access token. So this is how OAuth 2.0 workflow work. If you have any question, please feel free to ask on the comment section. Thank you so much for watching this video.